Aloha, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. My name is Stephanie Kakal, and the title of my project is Kalusugan at Kayamanan, the health and wealth of Filipinos in Kalihi. So this is a brief overview of what I'm going to talk about. Honestly, it's a lot of words and stuff, and so I'm trying to condense it into 10 minutes. I'm going to talk really fast, chances are, and I'm probably going to go over time. So bear with me, but follow along. So going right into it, the leading cause of mortality for Filipinos in Hawaii are cardiovascular disease and stroke. This can be due to behavioral risk factors that we can control, like physical inactivity and poor diet. But it also includes things like we can't control, like structural determinants of health. This is a growing problem because Filipinos are the second largest racial group here in Hawaii, and many of them reside in places like Kalihi because they are affordable and close to workplaces, family, and other Filipinos. However, living in a place like Kalihi comes with structural health disparities. Kalihi is known to be a medically underserved area, meaning there's less than one physician for every 3,500 residents. In addition, we face things like poverty, non-English speaking households, being uninsured, and just lack of education, which leads to the determinants of health for Filipinos in Kalihi. Education, it has been found that the highest level of education attained by Filipinos in Kalihi were a high school diploma. Because this is so, they have to work multiple domestic jobs and blue-collared occupations just to make ends meet. And this itself really limits the amount of choices you can make towards making yourself healthy. Without education, it leads to poor health choices. Having to work domestic jobs means you don't have enough income to buy these expensive healthy foods. Having to work multiple jobs means you don't have time to go out and run for your own health because you're working all the time. But the biggest behavioral barrier to a healthy Filipino would definitely have to be the reluctance to seek medical treatment or help. This can be due to personal conflicts, like they'd much rather go to work than go to see a doctor because that's why they come to America, they come to work. They don't know what their insurance covers, there's cultural differences, language misunderstandings, and just the whole perception of the medical visit can affect whether or not they want to go, because if they think the doctor is going to say something bad, then they're not going to go. And this whole overall perception of health is a barrier to becoming healthy because how you perceive your health is how you decide to act upon it. So for the community that I worked with, a lot of it has to do with internalized discrimination. Because they're Filipino, because they're from Kalihi, they internalize labels like poor and unhealthy, and they act upon it. This is why culturally competent programs are so necessary. We need them to understand that the programs we are creating to make them healthier are for them and about them. And so to do that, we need to know how they define health and what resources they own. Which leads to this idea of community cultural capital. Essentially, it's the non-monetized wealth that a community of a specific culture has. So non-monetized meaning not in relation to money. And now that brings us to the question, how is health and wealth actually related? I mean, I'm sure we've heard of quotes saying health is wealth or wealth is health, but there's still this blurred line of how one can affect the other. And I think a great example of this would be with the Native Hawaiians. In Native Hawaiian, the word for wealth is vai. In that word, we have the word vai, which means fresh water. From there, we kind of understand that their source of wealth comes from an abundance of fresh water. And this makes sense and is related to health because this abundance of fresh water allows for them to grow their crops. And those crops not only nourish their body, but it sustains their whole community. In Tagalog, we have the word Kayamanan. Here we see the word kaya, which means the ability and the power to accomplish, which could give a sense of what their source of wealth is. So with this idea of health and wealth, Kalihi Valley, a health facility in Kalihi, has managed to create programs to make their community healthier, one of them being Ho'ulu Aina Nature Preserve. Essentially what they do is they go to the valley, they work on the land, and by doing that, they're not only making the land healthier, but they're making themselves physically, spiritually, and emotionally healthier. And so the fact that a program like this exists proves that we can have programs that are incorporating values and beliefs of the culture, and it makes the community healthy. And so I wanted to do that with my community, specifically for Filipinos in Kalihi. I I want to know what their definition of wealth is, and how can I use that to create a healthier community. Which brings me to my research questions. 1. What are the barriers to a healthy Filipino in Kalihi, and how do I combine this idea of wealth and health for them? My hypothesis is, if we allow Filipinos to define their own health, reclaim their wealth, and realize their role in the community, then we can create this appropriate program or approach to their health. So to do this, I ran culture circles. Culture circles are almost like focus groups, but essentially they're like talk story sessions and learning circles where dialogue and knowledge is passed around. And I conducted a total of 13 of these with 52 participants. They were a very young group, between the ages of 18 to 24. An important thing to note is that they were all currently pursuing a higher education or have already pursued it. 22 of them were first generation, meaning they immigrated from the Philippines, and then the rest were either 1.5 or second generation. In the culture circles, I asked 4 main questions. What is health? What is wealth non-monetized? What role do you play in making your community healthy? And where do you go for a place of healing? That picture is actually of a board that I would actually bring to the culture circle so they could see and visualize what I'm asking. Through the culture circles, I managed to create a table of, well, these are the top 3, but I think more meaningful than this table would definitely have to be the narratives that came out about it. Because from there, you kind of see the mentality shift and this transformation of thinking. For example, I would ask, what is health? And it's almost as if they were conditioned to say that I don't know because my doctor says I'm not healthy. And so I really had to challenge them to think otherwise. It's like, no, you are healthy, tell me how. And eventually they got to things like being able to laugh and make others laugh is this way of being healthy. And this is a great step towards something because we went from, I don't know, I'm not healthy to I am and I can. So that's shift in mentality. Same for what is wealth. They internalize this idea that they're poor because they're from Kalihi. So as I continue to probe, they kind of realize that they actually are very wealthy and have all these sources of wealth that they can use and that are right in front of them. In terms of role, they really didn't feel like they had one. And so I had to make them realize, like, as a person in Kalihi, as a Filipino, you are part of this bigger picture. And that's when they realized, like, anything that I can do, I can help my community do as well. And then for this last question, I think a great thing to point out is the fact that their place of healing isn't anything physical. It's with people. So again, this whole sense of community is so important. So with their answers, narrative, stories, I created a framework on different ways you can address the health of the Filipino. So there are different aspects. There's the self and the relationship. So the self one is divided further into 4 categories: mind, body, spirit, soul, and being in existence. So if you notice the examples that are listed here, they're actually the examples that were named in the culture circles, the things that people actually said would make them healthy. So if, for example, if we wanted to approach health through the mind, we would do this by allowing these people to attend places of learning. And by doing that, they already feel like they become healthier. For the relationships, it was divided into 3 parts: relationship with family and friends, the land, culture, ancestor, and community. The biggest part of this would definitely have to be the friends and family, because if you look at the example, it says, optimum health can be achieved by sharing a meal or a cup of coffee. Something as small as sharing a meal is something that my people think will help them be healthier, and it can. So, in conclusion, if we want to create programs to be relevant and accepted, we need to utilize the perspectives and suggestions made by the target community. In the process of doing this, I got to see what my community wants to achieve. In addition, my community got to see what they actually have and what they can have. Like I said earlier, my community internalizes and conditions themselves to think that they're not healthy or wealthy. And this is a barrier to health because how can you create a program to help someone become healthier if they don't believe it? And so instead of focusing on the things that they lack and on the problems that they have, we need to really focus on the things that they already have to create healthier beings. In terms of further recommendation, I or someone would create a program based on the framework that I created to see if it works or not. And I think another thing I would love to do is to run culture circles with the parents of the people who I did culture circles with. Mainly because I think that there's a certain culture aspect that those parents might have more of a connection to. And it'd be interesting to find how we can use that culture aspect to help the community as a whole. That's about it. Mama, salamat. Any questions?
I do.
Yes.
What was your highlight of this project?
Really the highlight was when you see that like aha moment in the community when they're just like, oh, maybe I can be healthy, or maybe we are rich, or to see them think differently in an hour's worth of time or 2 hours worth of time was really the highlight of my day, because I felt like I made a difference. If I can convince this many people that they can be healthier, then imagine how much easier it would be to create other healthier communities.
Nice.
So this switch from like feeling unhealthy and unwealthy, they came from your participants, or you tried to convince them that they felt healthier or wealthier?
It came from them, but it took a lot of probing. Because I think, again, if you're so conditioned and if you're internalizing these things, you'll never think that way until someone tells you, no, seriously, you are healthy, or no, you can be wealthy if you kind of just look at it, keep thinking, you know? I mean, they listed it. It took time for them to kind of get to that point.
Right. Did you also experience any positive biases in your research?
What do you mean?
Like, did you enter the research that you already knew what you were looking for?
Not really.
How did you enter the research with this open mind to see what the participants will say?
I mean, kind of just accept
I mean, you
it.
did a great job. Really, really good research and everything.
That's it. Okay. I mean,
Maybe just like, yeah, in the future when you will do research, like, because those things could be also important in research too. So if researcher has to like
right.
face with their own biases. But yeah, good job.
Reiterate, what was the age group of the groups?
18 to 24.
Okay. So it'll be interesting, like you kind of mentioned,
Yeah, the
at the
parents.
end, to do a different generation. They might have very
Mhm.
different perspectives. Yeah.
Definitely. It was a very young group.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just so happened that way because I did advertise to the whole community, but those were the people who came out. So, yes.
How long was your research?
I got IRB approved in June. I ended the culture circles September, October, and then after that was pretty much analysis and all that, like transcribing and all that fun stuff. So it pretty much ended maybe like November.